Monday, the peak of Mount Asahi is shrouded in a thick fog, a remnant of one of the most violent storms to strike the region in months. Cautions. Rainfall from the previous night has transformed the narrow mountain paths into treacherous trails of mud. Cautions. While gusts of wind still stir the trees in ominous whispers. Above, a helicopter hums loudly, its blades cutting through the dense mist as it sweeps the area. Cautions. Desperately searching for two hikers from Tokyo who set out the day before and have since vanished without a trace. The search team has been at this for hours. Cautions. Daylight is rapidly fading, and with each passing minute, the likelihood of finding the hikers alive diminishes. The mountain. Cautions. Normally a serene landscape with picturesque views, now feels more like a hostile wilderness, concealing its secrets. Cautions. The searcher's eyes comb every ridge and crevice, scanning for the smallest clue. Broken branches, a flash of color. Cautions. Or disturbed ground, but nothing emerges from the gloom. Just when hope seems almost lost, something catches the eye of the helicopter pilot. Below. Cautions. In a small clearing just south of the mountain, an unmistakable sight appears: a massive, crudely constructed south sign. Cautions. Made of tree trunks and clearly visible from the air, it beckons from the wetland, a signal for help that pierces through the dense fog. Cautions. Relief floods the search team as they realize this could be the break they need. That's it. Cautions. That's our hikers, one of the team members exclaims over the radio. The helicopter banks hard, descending toward the sign. For the searchers. Cautions. The discovery of the sauce feels like a lifeline. Not just for the missing hikers, but for the operation as a whole. In conditions like these. Cautions. Finding anyone without such a clear signal would have been almost impossible. Ground teams move quickly. Cautions. Swarming the area with the hope that the hikers are nearby, hiding in the dense foliage or taking shelter in a cave. They search the immediate surroundings. Cautions. Combing every inch of the wetland for signs of life. For hours, the search continues. The sky above is now painted with the deep hues of twilight. Cautions. The shadows on the mountain growing longer and darker. Then, finally a breakthrough. About a mile north of the SES sign, two figures emerge from a cave. Cautions. Staggering toward the rescuers. The two men are disoriented, their faces pale and gaunt, their clothes soaked and torn from the ordeal. Cautions. Their expressions are a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and confusion. The rescuers rush forward, guiding them to safety. Cautions. As the men are bundled into the helicopter, one of the search team members congratulates them on their quick thinking. Cautions. You guys did a great job building this OS sign. It really saved your lives, the team member says with a reassuring smile. Cautions. But the two men exchange bewildered glances before one of them, still shaking from the cold and shock, responds, "What sign? We didn't build any sign." Cautions. We don't know what you're talking about. It's a Mount Asahi, or Asahidikit, is one of the most stunning and treacherous landscapes in Japan. Cautions. It is Hokkaido's highest peak, a region known for its volcanic mountains, hot springs, and steam vents that create an almost otherworldly atmosphere. Cautions. It's no wonder that hikers from all over Japan, and even the world, flock to its trails every year. Cautions. Its rugged beauty and dreamlike scenery offer experiences that are unforgettable. Cautions. Whether you're hiking through summer wildflowers or navigating its icy winter paths. But it's also a place of extremes. Cautions. The weather on Mount Asahi can change in an instant. Bright sunshine can give way to howling winds and torrential rain within the span of an hour. Cautions. Storms can roll in from the horizon with little warning, turning a peaceful hike into a fight for survival. Cautions. And it's this volatility that often spells disaster for the unprepared. Cautions. The story of the two Tokyo hikers should have been one of those close call rescue stories. They were lost, disoriented, and found just in time. Cautions. But that the star of mystery of the SOS sign, a sign they claim not to have built, would lead to a series of events far stranger and far more disturbing than anyone could have predicted. Cautions. The location of the SOS sign was 2.6 miles south of the summit of Mount Asahi, in a flat. Cautions. Marshy area that didn't align with any of the well-traveled hiking routes. It was an odd place for anyone to end up, let alone build a massive signal for help. Cautions. The sign itself was composed of 19 large birch logs, each about 16 feet long, and neatly arranged to form the letters SOS. Cautions. The craftsmanship was deliberate and efficient, indicating that whoever made it had spent significant time and effort constructing it. Cautions. But there was no sign of the Tokyo hikers near the source. It seemed almost certain that someone else had built it. Cautions. The discovery sparked confusion among the search team and the local police. If the two hikers hadn't built the source, then who had? Cautions. And why were they never found? The area surrounding the sign was immediately searched for additional clues, but as the hours stretched into days, cautions, no new answers emerged. Though on the second day after the hikers were rescued, cautions, a second team was dispatched to thoroughly investigate the wetland around the SOS sign. Cautions. The hope was that they might find the remains of whoever built the sign. Perhaps a hiker who had become lost and perished before they could be rescued. Cautions. But what they found was far more unsettling. Not far from the SOS sign, hidden among the dense underbrush, they discovered scattered human remains. Bones. Cautions. Bleached by the elements, were strewn across the ground, and nearby was a weathered backpack containing a few personal items, a Sony Walkman. Cautions. Several cassette tapes, a tube of toothpaste, a bar of soap, and a towel. The bones bore clear bite marks, likely from local wildlife. Cautions, and were in an advanced state of decay. It seemed obvious that the remains belonged to whoever had built the SOS sign. But something didn't add up. Cautions. If this person had been strong and resourceful enough to construct such an elaborate signal for help, how had they died out here? Cautions. Seemingly without ever leaving the area. And more importantly, why had they been unable to save themselves? The initial theory was simple. Cautions. The person had likely succumbed to exposure after getting lost. Maybe the storm had disoriented them, leading them far off the main trail and into the wetlands. Cautions. The weather on Mount Asahi is notoriously unpredictable, and storms can trap even the most experienced hikers. But as more details emerged, cautions, that theory began to unravel. The bones upon examination belonged to a woman. She was estimated to have been between 20 and 40 years old, about 5'3" tall, cautions, and had likely been dead for 1 to 3 years. There were several bone fractures, suggesting that she had suffered significant injuries. Cautions, possibly from a fall. But beyond this basic description, there was no identifying information. Cautions. No one had reported a woman matching her description missing in the area, and none of the personal items found with her offered any additional clues. Cautions. The discovery raised more questions than answers. How had this woman ended up in such a remote part of the mountain? Cautions. And how had she managed to build a massive SOS sign while injured? The more investigators tried to piece together her story, the more impossible it seemed. Cautions. The logs used to build the SOS sign were another puzzle. Birch logs, each weighing between 150 and 400 pounds, depending on their diameter. Cautions. Were not something that could be easily dragged through the wilderness, especially by someone injured. Cautions. The total weight of the logs used to create the sign was estimated to be between 850 and 600 pounds, an extraordinary amount of weight for one person to move. Cautions. Let alone a small woman with fractures. No tools were found at the site. There was no axe, no saw, nothing that could explain how the trees had been cut down. Cautions. It was as if the sign had been constructed by an unseen force, a mystery that defied all logical explanation. As the days passed, cautions, the mystery surrounding the SOS sign deepened. Japanese police were left with an unsolved case banadi, an impossibly constructed sign. Cautions, and no clear explanation for how it all came to be. Then another strange detail emerged. Cautions. The cassette tapes found in the backpack were handed over to investigators. Cautions, who were eager to see if they might provide some insight into the identity of the deceased woman. Cautions. They hoped that the tapes might contain personal recordings, perhaps a final message or a diary of sorts, that would offer clues to what had happened. Cautions. But when they played the tapes, they found something unexpected. Most of the recordings were of the music from various anime TV shows. Cautions. The kind of music you might expect to find on a fan's personal mixtape. The music was unremarkable, a mundane detail in an otherwise bizarre case. Cautions. Then they reached the final tape. Instead of music, the tape contained a distressed voice calling out for help. The voice, clearly man, cautions, repeatedly asked for rescue, stating that he was trapped on the mountain and couldn't climb out. The man described his location, cautions, referencing a steep cliff and deep bamboo grass that made it impossible to ascend. SOS, help me. I'm stuck on the cliff. Cautions. I'm at the location where I first met the helicopter. The sasa bamboo is too deep and I can't climb up. Cautions. Please pick me up. The voice was filled with fear and desperation, but there was something odd about the message. Cautions. At no point did the man mention anyone else. There was no indication that he was with another person. Cautions. No calls for help for Cuss or one. It was as if he was completely alone. But how could that be? The remains found near the sus sign were female. Cautions. Was this man the one who had built the sign? And if so, why was there no mention of the woman in his desperate pleas for help? Cautions. Were they truly together on the mountain, or had their past in some strange, inexplicable way? The more the investigators listened to the tape, cautions, the more unnerving it became. Cautions. It was as if the two people, the man on the recording and the woman whose bones were found, had existed in completely separate realities. Cautions. Both lost on the same mountain, but entirely unaware of each other's presence. The case grew colder, and police were left with few leads. Cautions. Despite the bones being identified as female, the possibility lingered that they might belong to the man on the tape. Cautions. The weight and size of the bones had caused some confusion, and as forensic techniques improved, a new conclusion was reached. Cautions. The bones were reclassified as belonging to a man. This reversal sent shockwaves through the investigation. If the bones belonged to a man, cautions, then who was the woman? Why was the sus sign built? And what had really happened on Mount Asahi? To make matters more confusing, a Japanese reporter, cautions, fascinated by the case, set out to explore the area where the sus sign was found. His investigation, though mostly uneventful, yielded one surprising discovery. Cautions. Buried beneath tree roots, just 165 feet from the sus sign, the reporter uncovered a holas filled with belongings, 2 cameras, a notebook, and cautions. Most shockingly, an ID card. The name on the ID was Kenji Ura, a 24-year-old man from Taikan City in southern Japan, over 800 miles from Mount Asahi. Cautions. The discovery was huge. It seemed that the remains might belong to this man, and perhaps he was the one on the recording. Kenji Ura had been missing for years. Cautions. Having set out for a hike on Mount Asahi and never returned. His parents confirmed that the backpack found at the scene did, in fact, belong to him. Cautions. It seemed like the case was finally reaching a resolution. But when Kenji's parents listened to the tape, they were adamant. Cautions. The voice on the recording was not their son. The mystery of the sus sign remains one of Japan's most perplexing unsolved cases. To this day, cautions, no one knows who built the sign, who the bones belonged to, or who the man on the tape was. Cautions. The possibility that 2 people, completely unaware of each other, died in the same location without ever crossing paths is a chilling thought. Cautions. Some believe that there was another hiker with Kenji Ura, someone who helped build the sign, but perished before being found. Cautions. Others suggest that Kenji was somehow able to build the sign despite his injuries, though this seems unlikely given the sheer physical demands of the task. Cautions. Whatever the true cautions, the sus sign stands as a haunting reminder of the dangers of Mount Asahi, a place where the line between life and death is as thin as the fog that so often blankets its peaks. Cautions. The mountain holds its secrets tightly, and the mystery of the SOS sign remains unsolved, lost to the wilderness and the passage of time.